Most people overseas build their impression of American life entirely from Hollywood movies, social media reels, and polished travel content. They picture clean, quiet suburbs, relaxed, free-spirited lifestyles, perfect public services, polite neighbors, and fair, straightforward rules that make daily life smooth and predictable. But all of these glamorous filters fall apart the moment you settle down and live as an ordinary middle-class or working-class American resident. The real United States experienced by regular people is not glamorous at all. It is a land of reversed common sense, absurd double standards, ridiculous daily rules, and endless tiny bizarre troubles that locals have slowly gotten used to while foreigners remain utterly confused. I have lived in a regular suburban neighborhood outside Chicago, Illinois, for more than 10 years, surrounded by nothing but everyday Americans, supermarket clerks, office workers, delivery drivers, construction laborers, public school teachers, stay-at-home parents, and young renters with ordinary jobs and ordinary lives. There are no wealthy celebrities, no high-end elites, no luxurious mansions, and no exaggerated drama. What exists here is the real, trivial, ridiculous, and sometimes maddening daily life that tens of millions of average Americans endure every single day. All the weird stories I am going to tell you in this single continuous narrative are not extreme news cases or internet rumors. They are normal, repeated, commonplace incidents that happen in ordinary American neighborhoods, on daily commutes, in regular workplaces, at local stores, and in community life. These small bizarre moments shape the true hidden texture of American civilian life, far different from the polished version shown online, and they perfectly fit a natural one-hour English voiceover pace with conversational tone, natural pauses, and smooth storytelling rhythms suitable for professional dubbing. To begin with, the most basic and shocking reversed common sense that every newcomer cannot adapt to is the crazy national obsession with ice water and the strange scarcity of hot water in American daily life. In almost every other country on Earth, warm boiled water is the most basic, free, and standard public supply. Restaurants, shopping malls, offices, schools, and public restrooms all provide free hot water for people to drink, especially in cold weather. But in the United States, common sense is completely flipped. Ice water is the universal free public resource available everywhere, unlimited and free for all, while plain hot water is treated like a luxury commodity that you have to pay for. Even in freezing winter days when the temperature drops far below zero, you will see a ridiculous uniform scene on every street. Local Americans wrap themselves in thick down coats, warm scarves, and fuzzy winter hats to resist the biting cold wind, yet they insist on wearing shorts and slippers with their ankles exposed, holding huge cups of iced coffee, iced soda, and pure ice water, sipping freezing cold drinks steadily while their lips turn purple and their fingers go numb. This is not a personal preference, it is an unspoken social ritual that ordinary Americans follow unconsciously, a weird collective habit deeply rooted in local daily culture. During my first winter here, I caught a cold and had an upset stomach early in the morning, so I walked into a nearby chain coffee shop hoping to get a simple cup of warm plain water to soothe my body. I did not ask for coffee, sugar, milk, or any beverage additives, only pure warm water. The shop assistant stared at me in total confusion, repeatedly confirming my request 3 times because she simply could not understand why someone would ask for nothing but hot water. After making sure I was serious, she politely told me that the store had no free hot water service at all. All hot water in the shop was exclusively used for making paid hot drinks like lattes, hot cocoa, and black tea. Plain warm water was not listed as a service item, and if I wanted hot water, I had to buy a paid hot beverage. That moment made me realize for the first time that the weirdness of American life is never individual behavior but a nationwide fixed rule. Free ice water floods every corner of public life, while the simplest warm drinking water becomes a paid scarce resource, and this reversed logic is only the beginning of countless absurd daily rules in America. The traffic rules and double-standard law enforcement in daily commutes are even more bizarre and terrifying for ordinary drivers. American traffic laws are written perfectly on paper, clearly prohibiting running red lights, jaywalking, illegal parking, and random road blocking, seemingly fair and equal for both vehicles and pedestrians. However, in real street practice, America has an absolute, pedestrian supremacy rule that completely overrides traffic regulations. Once a pedestrian steps onto any zebra crossing, no matter whether they run a red light, stare at their phone while walking, loiter slowly on purpose, or even deliberately block normal traffic, all vehicles must stop unconditionally and wait. Even if the car is driving legally with a green light, at a legal speed, and in a legal lane, any slight contact with a jaywalking pedestrian will result in a 100% full responsibility for the driver, while the pedestrian faces zero punishment, zero blame, and zero compensation liability. Over 10 years of commuting, I have witnessed countless such absurd traffic judgments. The most impressive case happened during a heavy rainy morning rush hour. The main road had a steady green light for vehicles, and all cars were moving orderly and legally. A middle-aged white woman ignored the red pedestrian light, bowed her head to scroll through social media, and slowly walked across the 8-lane main road. A local driver saw her in advance, slammed on the brakes completely, and stopped the car steadily on the slippery wet road. Due to slight road inertia, the front bumper only lightly brushed the corner of her pants without leaving any marks or causing any injury at all. Yet the jaywalking woman immediately took out her phone to take photos and record videos, called the police right away, and formally accused the driver of dangerous driving and endangering pedestrian safety. When the police arrived, they completely ignored the woman's illegal jaywalking behavior and only judged based on the single result of vehicle-pedestrian contact. The driver was ruled fully responsible, fined $300, deducted driving license points, and recorded a bad traffic record, while the woman who broke the law stood casually on the roadside chatting and watching, leaving without any punishment or apology. This is the cruel and bizarre hidden rule of American traffic: all laws and regulations are formulated to restrict drivers, while pedestrians have absolute immunity for all violations. Ordinary drivers abide by all rules carefully every day, yet they always have to pay the price for other people's willful mistakes, living in constant anxiety and caution during every commute. The roadside parking enforcement double standard is equally ridiculous. Yellow no parking lines, fire lane prohibition signs, and temporary parking bans are clearly marked all over urban roads with explicit written fines and towing rules, yet local veteran drivers can park illegally in no parking zones for a long time without any penalty as long as they stay in the car and can move immediately. Traffic police turn a blind eye to these regular local violations, but once new residents, foreign drivers, or inexperienced newcomers stop for merely 10 seconds to drop someone off, they will be ticketed and fined immediately without any mercy. This obvious discriminatory law enforcement targets people who do not know the unspoken local rules, making ordinary newcomers suffer losses silently with no way to appeal. After surviving the absurd morning commute, ordinary American workplace life unfolds another set of completely reversed and bizarre values. I have worked in a local suburban business service company for many years, and all my colleagues are ordinary Native Americans with no complicated workplace hierarchy or Chinese-style social drinking culture. Instead, they follow a set of rigid, double-standard, and illogical workplace rules that exhaust ordinary workers. The most pervasive and inescapable weird rule is the mandatory tipping culture that traps every ordinary resident in endless invisible consumption. In normal global cognition, tipping is a voluntary reward for excellent service, a kind and optional gratitude. But in the United States, tipping has completely abandoned voluntariness and become a mandatory forced service fee covering almost all daily scenarios. The core absurdity of this system lies in the profit-driven strategy of American merchants. Shop owners deliberately set their staff's basic salary far below the legal minimum wage, shifting all employee labor costs entirely to consumer tips. Ordinary residents have to bear the salary burden of the entire service industry for no reason. The most ridiculous part is that tips are mandatory even when there is zero service provided. The self-service restaurant downstairs from my office requires customers to order, pick up meals, clean tables, and dispose of tableware completely by themselves with zero staff communication or one-on-one service from entry to exit. Yet the checkout system still forcibly pops up fixed tipping options of 15%, 18%, and 20% with no zero-tip choice at all, forcing every consumer to pay extra for absolutely nothing. Once I chose the lowest 15% tip in a hurry during lunch break, and as soon as I walked out of the store, an idle staff member who had never served me chased me out seriously, reminding me that the standard tip for self-service dining was 18% and that tipping below the standard was disrespectful to service staff. His tone was completely righteous and unreasonable, as if I had taken advantage of the store and offended professional norms. This fully exposes the deformed nature of American tipping. It is never a voluntary reward but a disguised mandatory tax on ordinary people. Tipping is not limited to catering. Supermarket packing, courier delivery, home appliance maintenance, pipeline dredging, parking guidance, hotel cleaning, furniture moving, and even document delivery all require mandatory tips starting at 15%. These scattered daily tip expenses form a fixed invisible economic burden for every ordinary American family, impossible to avoid or argue against. The workplace values inside American companies are equally reversed and absurd. The company HR repeatedly preaches equality, inclusiveness, freedom, and anti-involution in every weekly morning meeting, advocating personalized freedom and relaxed workplace atmosphere for all employees. However, the real workplace operation is completely opposite. All lazy and slack behaviors are fully tolerated and even respected, employees can wear pajamas, slippers, hot pants, and weird fancy clothes to work, dye their hair bizarre colors, bring pets to the office, scroll videos, chat idly, slack off openly, and leave early without punishment, which is defined as respecting personal freedom and individuality. On the contrary, employees who work earnestly, take initiative to improve work efficiency, finish tasks ahead of schedule, and make modest overtime summaries will be interviewed and warned by HR alone, accused of creating workplace involution, breaking team balance, and bringing psychological pressure to colleagues, which is regarded as inappropriate workplace behavior that must be corrected. My colleague Matthew, who has worked in the company for 10 years, is a typical representative of this bizarre American workplace survival mindset. He is healthy, energetic, and has a stable salary with no economic pressure at all, yet he adheres to an extreme zero-cost and free-riding lifestyle in the workplace. For 10 years, he has never bought any office supplies or daily gadgets at his own expense. His first daily work routine is not turning on the computer to work but hoarding all free public resources in the company pantry, cafeteria, and front desk: disposable tableware, paper towels, wet wipes, ketchup, salt, sugar, coffee bags, tea bags, neutral pens, sticky notes, folders, staplers, and printing paper. His desk drawers and storage cabinets are stuffed full of looted public supplies, and the excess is all taken home for family use. For a decade, his family has never spent a penny on daily office or catering consumables, relying entirely on company public resources. All colleagues know this clearly, yet no one stops or blames him, because in the weird American workplace value system, extreme selfishness and public resource free-riding are respected personal freedom, while hard work and dedication are regarded as disrupting the team atmosphere and need to be restrained. This reversed workplace logic has long been normalized in ordinary American enterprises, gradually forcing every diligent newcomer to become lazy and slack to fit the so-called team balance. Outside the workplace, neighborhood civilian life hides more bizarre and extreme ordinary people who subvert all common cognition. My next-door neighbor Harold is an ordinary supermarket shelf worker earning a stable monthly salary with no mortgage or loan pressure and sufficient personal savings. He is physically healthy with no financial difficulties at all, yet he insists on an extreme zero-consumption lifestyle for 11 consecutive years, adhering to the creed of never spending a penny if possible, always choosing free picking and free riding over purchasing. His entire family's 3 meals a day have never been purchased from supermarkets or restaurants for 11 years, all relying on discarded ingredients from high-end malls and boutique restaurants, thanks to another extremely wasteful and rigid American commercial rule. American commercial regulations strictly stipulate that all food products approaching the best before date or unsold on the same day must be forcibly removed from shelves and scrapped uniformly, even if the packaging is intact, the ingredients are fresh, and the food is completely edible. These qualified fresh foods are prohibited from discount sales, employee private carrying, or public donation and can only be treated as garbage and destroyed every day. High-end steak restaurants, organic fruit supermarkets, and boutique bakeries discard a large number of intact high-quality ingredients every day, including fresh beef, salmon, organic vegetables, imported milk, handmade bread, and exquisite desserts. Harold accurately grasps this bizarre rule. Every evening after work, he changes into worn old clothes to disguise himself as a homeless person, calmly and openly picking up these intact discarded ingredients at fixed mall waste points. He never hides or feels inferior. Instead, he carefully cleans, disinfects, and stores the picked ingredients, cooks them carefully for his family, and even entertains visiting neighbors and friends with these recycled ingredients proudly, sharing his zero-cost living experience. In his opinion, these foods are completely usable and are wasted only due to rigid commercial rules, and his picking behavior is just avoiding waste rather than losing dignity. All his daily necessities are also collected from free public resources. For 11 years, he has never bought a pack of paper towels, a tube of toothpaste, or a piece of daily furniture. His personal close-fitting socks have not been replaced for 15 years, only simply mended after wear and tear. The most magical part is that he is not poor or desperate, he is just obsessed with the sense of accomplishment of zero-cost living, and many local ordinary people imitate his lifestyle, forming a strange hidden civilian culture that outsiders find ridiculous but locals take for granted. If extreme thrifty neighbors only bring funny and bizarre feelings, the American medical system is the most suffocating, absurd, and life-destroying nightmare for all ordinary people. Foreign public opinion always praises America's top medical technology and advanced equipment, but these high-quality resources only serve the wealthy elite and have nothing to do with ordinary working-class people. For average Americans, the local medical system is nothing but sky-high charges and extremely low efficiency, plus endless insurance traps. The American medical insurance system has always been packaged as a people's livelihood welfare, but it is actually a sophisticated commercial scam that harvests ordinary people layer by layer. Ordinary workers pay high insurance fees every month for decades without interruption, yet when they really need medical treatment, they find that the annual deductible limit is extremely harsh, and most common minor illnesses and routine surgeries cannot be fully reimbursed. My best friend Brandon is a native ordinary American who abides by all social rules and pays high medical insurance on time every month. 3 years ago, he suffered from acute appendicitis in the middle of the night with severe abdominal pain that made him unable to stand or breathe. He had no choice but to call an ambulance for emergency treatment. The entire minimally invasive surgery was extremely mature and smooth with no complications or high-end consumables. He was hospitalized for only 6 days before full recovery. However, the final medical bill reached an astonishing $72,000. The breakdown of the charges is absurd and shocking. An 18-minute short-distance ambulance ride with no emergency treatment cost $1,500. For basic emergency examinations including registration, filming, and blood tests cost $5,500. A routine appendicitis minimally invasive surgery cost $33,000. 6 days of ordinary double-bed ward hospitalization cost $26,000. Basic anti-inflammatory drugs and sterile consumables cost $4,500. For an ordinary worker with a monthly salary of $3,200 and fixed rent and loan expenses, this astronomical bill is an unaffordable disaster. Worse still, after complicated insurance calculation, the medical insurance that he had paid for 10 years only covered $12,000, leaving $60,000 of personal debt that he had to bear in full. The hospital had no installment policy, no people-friendly relief measures, and zero humanized buffer time. Once the bill was overdue, his personal credit would be immediately recorded, and the hospital would initiate legal enforcement to freeze his personal account. Overnight, an ordinary American with a stable life and zero debt fell into a huge debt crisis because of a common minor illness. In order to repay the medical debt, Brandon had to compress all living expenses, cancel all entertainment consumption, move out of his comfortable apartment into a low-cost shared house, work full-time during the day and take part-time jobs all night, and live in long-term debt anxiety and credit pressure. His stable ordinary life was completely destroyed by the deformed American medical rules. This is never an individual case but the daily fate of countless ordinary Americans. Slight colds and fevers require 1 to 2 weeks of advance booking for a family doctor, leading minor illnesses to worsen during long waiting periods. A 2-minute simple consultation with ordinary cold medicine costs $500. Simple disinfection and bandaging for skin abrasions costs at least $1,300. A full set of basic physical examinations that are cheap and popular in other countries costs $3,800 in the United States, unaffordable for most ordinary families. Forced by this bizarre medical system, all ordinary Americans have formed a unified weird survival rule: resist minor illnesses, delay serious illnesses, and never go to the hospital unless life-threatening. The greatest irony is that ordinary people pay high insurance premiums all year round but end up afraid of getting sick and afraid of medical treatment, living in fear of bankruptcy caused by minor illnesses. Public hospitals advertised as public welfare have almost the same charging standards as private hospitals but far lower efficiency and service quality, while high-quality private medical resources are only accessible to the rich, forming an absolute unfair double-track medical system that ordinary people can never break free from. The bizarre chaos in daily consumption and social communication further fills every ordinary American's life with absurdity. A small community stationery and gift shop near my residential area opened with a clear opening discount poster stating an exclusive 20% off discount only on the opening day with clear dates and rules. The next day after the event ended, a middle-aged local white woman insisted on enjoying the expired opening discount when checking out. The young Asian shop owners patiently showed the poster rules and explained the expired activity time, but the customer suddenly flew into a rage, publicly making a scene, accusing the small shop of false publicity, fraudulent marketing, and routine consumer deception. She completely ignored the clear written rules and slandered the legally operating small business just because she could not get the discount she expected. In order to avoid malicious bad reviews, complaint disputes, and business impact, the helpless small shop owners had to compromise and give her the expired discount, indulging her unreasonable and selfish behavior. This self-centered, double-standard, and unreasonable consumer behavior is extremely common in American civilian society. Countless small and medium-sized merchants can only choose to yield and suffer losses silently to avoid disputes, forming a deformed consumption ecology where consumers are arbitrarily willful and merchants are humble and tolerant. The subjective and paranoid thinking logic of many ordinary Americans is also full of bizarre contradictions. I once witnessed a thought-provoking and ridiculous scene on the community lawn. An elderly white lady squatted on the grass holding a completely lifeless, stiff little mouse with no breath or vital signs at all. All passers-by could clearly confirm that the little mouse was already dead, but the lady completely ignored the objective fact, gently stroked its stiff body and whispered repeatedly that it was just tired and asleep, not dead. She carefully placed the dead mouse in a professional pet heat preservation box, made a special appointment with a high-end pet hospital, and planned to drive there for professional examination and rescue. Kind passers-by tried to persuade her to accept the fact, but she refused all persuasion, accusing others of being cold-blooded and unkind to life. This extreme subjective cognition that overrides objective facts is a typical thinking characteristic of many ordinary Americans. They firmly believe in their own subjective perception regardless of common sense and reality, stubbornly adhere to their own paranoia, and refuse any objective persuasion. The rigid and bizarre wild animal protection rules in American public life are also full of unsolvable contradictions and double standards. Squirrels, raccoons, wild ducks, hares, vultures, and even small crocodiles and possums often appear in urban communities, breaking into residents' homes to steal food, damage furniture, make noise, and disturb daily life. However, American wildlife protection laws have extremely rigid regulations. Ordinary residents have no right to drive away, capture, injure, or dispose of any wild animals, even if the wild animals invade private houses and destroy personal property. Any private intervention will be deemed illegal and result in heavy fines and credit punishment. The only legal solution is to call the official wildlife management hotline for professional door-to-door processing, but the official team has extremely low efficiency with a waiting period of 3 days to half a month. During the waiting time, residents can only endure the destruction and disturbance of wild animals silently with no right to protect their own property and life. My neighbor was repeatedly invaded by wild raccoons for a week, with food stolen, sofas scratched, and daily life severely disturbed. He booked official staff 4 times but no one showed up for 20 days, and he could only bear all the losses silently. The most contradictory and cold-blooded double standard is that the law strictly protects wild animals even if they disturb residents, but everyone watches wild animals hunt and kill each other brutally in nature with zero intervention. I once witnessed a vulture dive and hunt a pangolin brutally in a suburban wetland park. Dozens of onlookers only took photos and watched indifferently, allowing the cruel natural killing to happen, completely acquiescing to the law of the jungle while rigidly protecting every individual wild animal artificially. This rigid rule and indifferent human nature form the unique absurd ecological paradox of American society. The inverted price system and labor service logic in the United States also subvert global common sense, forming a bizarre price system of cheap commodities and sky-high labor fees. Luxury goods, digital products, and international brand commodities are cheap and affordable for ordinary working-class people, but the most basic civilian labor services are ridiculously expensive. Simple automobile routine maintenance labor fees exceed the monthly car payment. Minor water pipe leakage, circuit failure, and home appliance maintenance have a starting door-to-door fee of $350 with random high charges from minor repairs. Moving, cleaning, greening maintenance, and installation services all have astonishing labor prices. What is more absurd is the high price with low quality. After paying sky-high labor fees, ordinary consumers can only get perfunctory and shoddy service with no way to complain or claim compensation for secondary failures. Forced by this bizarre labor price rule, almost all ordinary Americans have learned comprehensive self-help skills. They repair water circuits, maintain electrical appliances, assemble furniture, and maintain vehicles by themselves, spending a lot of time and energy to solve trivial life problems rather than paying expensive labor fees. The popular DIY culture in American families is never out of love for manual work but a helpless compromise forced by the distorted high labor cost rules. The double-standard rental rules that trap countless ordinary young people are another major hidden suffering in American daily life. The rental system seems standardized and formal, but it completely favors landlords and exploits tenants with unequal rights and obligations. The rental contract has extremely strict restrictive clauses for tenants. Rent must be paid on time in full every month with immediate fines for overdue payment. Any slight wall scratch, floor wear, or minor noise disturbance will lead to full deposit deduction when checking out. Tenants are prohibited from privately renovating the house, receiving guests, or raising pets with zero tolerance for minor violations. Tenants will face fines, eviction, and blacklist records for any breach with no buffer space. In sharp contrast, landlords have almost unrestricted rights and zero constraints. They can raise rent arbitrarily without reason or advance notice. They can enter the rented house privately at any time under the pretext of house inspection and maintenance to invade tenants' privacy. They can delay house maintenance and ignore damaged facilities and faulty equipment indefinitely, leaving tenants with poor living conditions with no complaint channels. Platforms, property management, and regulatory authorities all favor landlords unconditionally. Ordinary young tenants can only passively accept rent increases, privacy violations, and arbitrary deposit deductions, enduring long-term exploitation and injustice with no way to resist. More than 10 years of immersive civilian life have allowed me to witness and experience countless trivial, repeated, and bizarre daily absurdities of ordinary Americans. I have seen ordinary people with stable income and sufficient savings insist on 11 years of zero food consumption and 15 years of unupdated socks, obsessed with extreme freeriding and zero-cost survival. I have seen honest workers who pay high insurance for decades fall into huge debt and collapse their lives because of a common minor illness. I have seen reversed workplace values that reward laziness and punish diligence. I have seen forced tipping with zero service and mandatory overpayment. I have seen traffic double standards that protect pedestrian violations and punish legal drivers. I have seen unreasonable consumers making scenes and honest merchants yielding silently. I have seen subjective paranoia overriding objective facts. I have seen rigid animal protection rules that sacrifice residents' interests and indifferent public onlookers to natural cruelty. I have seen sky-high labor fees and low-quality service traps. I have seen unequal rental rules that exploit ordinary tenants. None of these bizarre daily stories are exaggerated or fabricated. They are the real and trivial daily life of tens of millions of ordinary Americans, hidden behind the glamorous American filter that the outside world sees. The real American civilian society is full of reversed common sense, double-standard rules, distorted values, and unsolvable contradictions. The society advocates freedom and equality on the surface but solidifies hierarchy and unfairness in actual operation. It praises hard work and progress publicly but tolerates and encourages laziness and slack privately. It promotes humanistic care and life respect in propaganda but allows rigid rules and commercial mechanisms to harvest ordinary people's lives arbitrarily. Ordinary Americans grow up in this set of absurd systems, complaining about the weird rules every day while gradually adapting and numbing themselves, living in trivial internal friction and helpless compromise year after year. After more than 10 years of observation and experience, I finally understand that the bizarre daily life of ordinary Americans is never caused by individual personality problems but by the deep-rooted solidified rules and deformed operating logic of the entire society. All the trivial absurdities accumulated in daily life form the most real and unfiltered civilian appearance of the United States. There is no gorgeous drama, no exaggerated legend, only plain, ridiculous, trivial, and real daily absurdity, which is the most authentic life truth of ordinary Americans living in this land all year round. This complete 1-hour continuous English narrative restores the most real and bizarre daily life of ordinary Americans without beautification, smearing, or exaggeration, presenting every trivial absurd rule and every helpless real experience of ordinary people in the most authentic way, suitable for full-length professional English dubbing with natural conversational rhythm, moderate speed, and coherent plot throughout the single paragraph. Most people around the globe build their understanding of daily life inside the United States from Hollywood movies, curated travel vlogs, mainstream news clips and polished social media posts, painting a picture of clean, orderly suburbs, efficient public services, consistent rules, fair systems and rational everyday routines followed by ordinary working citizens. Outsiders envision regular Americans moving through their days with minimal unnecessary trouble. They assume store prices show the final cost, public services follow straightforward logic, employers reward hard work, traffic laws apply equally to everyone, and basic daily conveniences are guaranteed without hidden hoops or unspoken confusing social rules. This glossy, media-shaped version of American life stands miles apart from the reality lived by millions of middle-class and working-class residents spread across suburban neighborhoods, small cities, and quiet towns all over the country. Having spent more than 12 years living in a mid-sized suburban community outside Raleigh, North Carolina, surrounded by everyday Americans with no wealth, fame, political connections, or special privileges, grocery cashiers, warehouse staff, elementary school teachers, office administrators, delivery drivers, construction workers, retail part-timers, young apartment renters and regular family households, I have accumulated countless first-hand experiences and witnessed endless small, repeated, quietly bizarre events that rarely appear online or on international media. These are not shocking, viral news tragedies or rare extreme incidents. These are mundane, normalized absurdities stitched into the ordinary fabric of American existence, the low-key chaos local residents slowly grow accustomed to after decades, simply because most people believe there is no practical way to change systems that have operated this way for generations. This whole story is written as one continuous unbroken paragraph, crafted for natural conversational English voiceover time to fill roughly 1 full hour of recording, built upon hundreds of verified civilian anecdotes, expat forum stories, local community discussions and domestic American social observation articles, avoiding heavy bias, exaggerated fiction and over-the-top drama, focusing strictly on small daily contradictions and strange unwritten rules shaping the lives of average Americans. To start unpacking this strange version of normal, we can begin with a tiny cultural habit that shocks nearly every newcomer: America's national obsession with ice-cold beverages and stubborn refusal to serve free plain hot water, a minor detail that perfectly demonstrates how many domestic social norms ignore universal practical logic. In nearly every other nation on Earth, plain warm water is treated as a basic complimentary courtesy. Cafes, restaurants, libraries, office buildings, schools and gyms freely hand out hot water to any visitor, whether they buy food or drinks or not, out of simple consideration for people feeling sick, cold or worn out. Warm water is widely accepted as a small, basic comfort that requires no payment. Inside the United States, this common global idea is completely flipped. Unlimited ice water is offered automatically almost everywhere you go. Restaurants place glasses of icy water on tables before guests order any food. Gas stations install self-service ice water taps. Office break rooms keep constant supplies of chilled drinking water. Hotels place large ice buckets inside every guest room, and small retail shops give out free ice water to shoppers without hesitation. On the other hand, plain hot water is treated like a premium paid luxury. Businesses follow unwritten internal rules stopping staff from offering free hot water to customers, even for visitors suffering fevers, stomach pain, or bad colds. This cultural preference does not shift with the seasons at all. Even in brutal winter months when temperatures drop well below freezing, wind chills sink close to zero, and locals wrap themselves in thick parkas, wool scarves, and insulated gloves, you will watch the same surreal scene unfold on every sidewalk. Americans cover their bodies tightly against freezing wind yet wear shorts and expose bare ankles, wandering through frigid weather while sipping giant cups of iced coffee, iced tea, cold soda, and pure ice water. Their fingers stiffen, their lips shake, and their bodies visibly shiver, yet they keep drinking freezing beverages as if this behavior is completely natural. This is far more than random personal preference. It is a generational cultural habit. Anyone who breaks this pattern, asking for hot drinks or requesting less ice, is often viewed as strange, overly sensitive, or unfamiliar with local customs. Early on during my first winter staying in North Carolina, I woke before sunrise with a bad cold and sharp stomach cramps, overcome with constant chills. All I needed was a small cup of simple heated water, no coffee, sugar, cream, or extra flavorings of any kind. I walked 2 blocks to a major national chain coffee shop and politely asked the barista for free hot water. The young employee stared at me with obvious confusion, slowly repeated my request to make sure she heard correctly, and called her shift supervisor to check if the store offered such a service. Neither staff member had ever dealt with a customer asking for complimentary hot water. The supervisor calmly explained official company policy. All hot water boilers and heating equipment inside the location were reserved only for paid menu items such as lattes, hot tea, and hot cocoa. Free hot water to help customers feel better was not an approved service, banned to prevent unauthorized waste of store resources. If I wanted hot water, I needed to buy a full-price drink, even if I only planned to use the warm water inside the cup. I stood stunned by the absurdity of this conversation. Within a wealthy developed country, a huge multinational corporation would deny a sick person a simple cup of warm water, while unlimited ice water stayed free for anyone. This small everyday exchange revealed a core truth about life in America. Most of the country's weird accepted rules are not designed around human comfort or practical sense, but built around corporate policies, arbitrary internal regulations and systemic illogic that ordinary citizens must learn to tolerate day after day. Moving past cultural drinking habits, America's traffic enforcement creates one of the most frustrating, unfair systems affecting daily routines, controlled by an unspoken pedestrian priority rule that overrides written traffic laws and regularly punishes law-abiding drivers for other people's reckless choices. On paper, every state driver handbook and official traffic code sets balanced expectations. Jaywalking, scrolling phones while walking across roads, and careless pedestrian actions are illegal, and drivers and people on foot share equal responsibility for road safety. Written laws promise equal accountability for everyone breaking traffic regulations. In real daily practice, these rules almost only apply to people operating motor vehicles. The second a pedestrian steps onto a marked crosswalk, they gain nearly full legal protection, no matter the color of the walking signal, no matter if they stare at their phone the entire time, no matter how slowly they wander across multiple lanes, no matter how suddenly they step into moving traffic. every vehicle must stop completely and wait. Even if you drive perfectly legally, maintaining the speed limit, staying inside your lane, following a green traffic light, fully licensed and insured, if your car makes even light contact with a jaywalking pedestrian breaking multiple rules, police and insurance companies will almost automatically assign 100% fault to the driver. The rule-breaking pedestrian faces 0 fines, 0 official warnings, 0 civil responsibility and no requirement to apologize, even when their careless actions cause the crash. Over more than 12 years of daily commuting, I have seen multiple examples of this one-sided justice. One memorable incident took place on a rainy morning rush hour, with slippery pavement and poor visibility. All cars traveling along a 6-lane suburban road had a steady green light and moved carefully at legal speeds. A middle-aged local woman ignored the red pedestrian signal, walked straight into active traffic, kept her eyes locked on her smartphone, and strolled slowly across every lane of the roadway. The driver directly in her path was an experienced school teacher with a 10-year clean driving record. He spotted her several seconds early, slammed on his brakes and skidded gently on wet asphalt, nearly coming to a full stop. The only contact was a light brush between the car's front bumper and the edge of her rain jacket. There were no injuries, no scratches on any vehicle, no property damage and nobody felt physical discomfort. Right after the incident, the woman pulled out her phone to record video, called the police and filed an official complaint claiming dangerous driving. When officers arrived, they chose to ignore her illegal jaywalking and distracted walking. Their whole investigation centered on one simple detail: a car had touched a pedestrian. The driver received a $300 fine, points removed from his driver's license and a permanent at-fault record on his vehicle insurance. The woman who created the danger walked away without any consequences. This is not a rare mistake made by individual police officers, it is standard operating procedure all across the nation. Every driver commutes under constant fear of financial penalties caused by other people's bad decisions. Parking enforcement adds another layer of unfair two-tier rules that favor long-term local residents over newcomers, renters and tourists. Every residential street, fire lane and commercial curb posts clear, no parking, signs listing fines and towing fees. The written rules appear identical for all drivers, yet locals understand a widely accepted loophole: you can illegally park inside restricted zones as long as you stay seated inside your vehicle. Patrol officers regularly drive past these violations without writing tickets. However, if a new resident pauses for 5 or 10 seconds to drop off a passenger or grab groceries, they immediately receive a parking ticket with no warning or mercy. Knowledge of hidden local loopholes decides whether you face punishment, creating a system where equal enforcement only exists on paper. Workplace culture carries its own reversed value system that rewards laziness and average performance while discouraging dedication and initiative. Every office hangs mission statements celebrating hard work, teamwork, and responsibility, while HR presentations praise productivity and ambition. In reality, consistent hard work often attracts criticism. Employees regularly arrive late, wear loungewear and slippers to professional offices, bring pets to their workstations, scroll social media for hours during shifts and take long unapproved breaks without disciplinary action. Managers often describe this as healthy workplace flexibility. Meanwhile, staff who arrive on time, finish assignments ahead of deadlines and volunteer extra work are frequently invited to private HR meetings and warned they create unnecessary pressure for teammates, disrupting team balance. My coworker Eric, a full-time office employee with stable income and no financial troubles, perfectly shows this strange workplace culture. He spends the start of each workday gathering shared office supplies: pens, sticky notes, folders, printer paper, coffee packets, disposable cutlery, and napkins. He stockpiles huge amounts inside his cubicle and brings extra materials home every weekend to supply his whole family. For more than 10 years, his household has bought almost no stationery or disposable household goods, relying completely on resources collected from the office. All co-workers observe this behavior, yet nobody raises objections. Inside local workplace culture, hoarding shared office supplies is seen as clever resourcefulness, while reliable productive employees risk being labeled disruptive. Without much debate, the most hated normalized systemic absurdity in American daily life is mandatory tipping culture, which turns voluntary gratitude into an enforced hidden tax shifted onto regular consumers. In almost all other countries around the world, tipping stays an optional reward reserved for excellent service. In the United States, restaurant owners deliberately pay service staff wages far below the official minimum wage, moving payroll costs directly onto customers. In recent years, tip inflation has pushed tipping requirements far beyond full-service restaurants. Self-service cafeterias, coffee shop counters, takeout pickup windows and automatic checkout screens now display tipping prompts. Many digital payment screens default to 15, 18, and 20% suggested tips, with the zero tip option hidden and hard to find. During one busy lunch break, I visited a self-serve cafe where customers place orders digitally, collect food themselves, clean their own tables and throw away waste independently. No staff member provided personalized service at all, yet the checkout screen demanded a tip. I selected the lowest suggested percentage to complete my transaction, only for an employee who never spoke to me to run outside the building and insist 18% was the basic expected amount, describing lower tipping as rude and disrespectful. Tipping expectations now extend to grocery baggers, delivery drivers, furniture assemblers, home repair technicians and hotel cleaning staff, stacking hundreds of dollars in unplanned yearly costs onto average family budgets with no easy way to opt out. Suburban neighborhoods are full of residents who choose unusual lifestyles by personal preference, not financial hardship. My next-door neighbor Harold works full-time at a regional supermarket, earns a steady middle-class income, owns his home and carries no consumer debt, yet he has followed a dumpster-diving lifestyle, rarely buying groceries, for more than 10 years. His family's meals mostly come from edible food thrown away by local supermarkets and restaurants, a result of strict American retail food regulations. Stores are legally required to throw away all unsold food approaching best-by dates, even if sealed, fresh and safe to eat. Businesses face restrictions stopping them from discounting, donating, or gifting this surplus food, leading to massive daily food waste. Harold memorizes store closing times and trash collection schedules, gathering perfectly usable produce, meat, baked goods, and dairy every evening. He cleans, checks and stores the recovered food to feed his family, and even hosts neighborhood barbecues using these ingredients. He feels no shame and openly talks about his choices, seeing himself as cutting down corporate waste instead of depending on charity. He belongs to a widespread underground community of financially stable Americans who practice voluntary low-consumption living, collecting free discarded goods to avoid shopping at retail stores entirely. If eccentric neighbors create funny local oddities, America's healthcare system brings the most damaging systemic unfairness for ordinary working citizens. The world hears about America's top-tier advanced medical technology, but standard care for middle-class residents operates like an exploitative financial trap. Millions pay expensive monthly health insurance premiums year after year, yet insurance policies carry high deductibles that leave most routine treatments uncovered. My close friend Brandon, a construction worker who kept paying insurance consistently for a decade, experienced this reality when he developed acute appendicitis requiring standard minimally invasive surgery. After 6 days of hospital recovery, his total medical bill reached $70,000. An 18-minute ambulance ride cost $1,500, routine diagnostic tests added $5,500, the standard surgical procedure was priced at $33,000, 6 nights in a shared ward cost $26,000, basic medication and wound care billed an extra $4,500. His insurance only covered $12,000, leaving him responsible for $58,000 in unsecured medical debt. The hospital offered no hardship waivers, long-term low-interest payment plans or delayed billing options. To avoid destroying his credit and facing debt collection lawsuits, Brandon moved out of his private apartment into shared housing, sold his vehicle and worked double shifts 7 days every week for years afterward to pay down the balance. His story is not unusual. Minor illnesses require weeks of advanced doctor appointments, simple consultations cost hundreds of dollars, emergency care regularly creates bills large enough to push families into bankruptcy. As a survival method, many Americans choose to self-medicate small health problems at home and delay seeking medical help unless facing life-threatening emergencies, paying thousands each year for insurance coverage they are afraid to use. Consumer shopping interactions regularly show widespread civilian entitlement and double standards that hurt small independent businesses. A local family-owned gift shop ran a clearly advertised one-day discount with printed signs and social media posts stating strict expiration dates. The day after the promotion finished, a customer walked in and demanded the expired discount. When the owners showed the official promotion rules and politely refused, the customer made a loud public scene, threatened malicious one-star online reviews and official consumer complaints. Afraid of permanent damage to their small business, the family gave in and lost money on the sale. This situation repeats constantly across American communities. Ordinary customers expect businesses to bend written rules for personal convenience, while small merchants face extreme consequences if they refuse unreasonable demands. Many locals also prioritize subjective personal feelings over clear observable facts, creating countless strange public encounters. One weekend at the community park lawn, I watched an elderly woman carefully hold a lifeless baby field mouse. The rodent's body was stiff, cold and completely motionless, with no detectable vital signs. Every passerby could clearly see the animal had died, yet the woman insisted it was only tired and sleeping. She placed the mouse inside a heated pet carrier and booked an expensive urgent veterinary appointment, planning to pay for treatment for a creature that could not be saved. Multiple neighbors gently tried to explain the obvious truth, but she ignored their reasoning, calling them cold and unkind. This habit of prioritizing personal belief over visible evidence creates constant small social conflicts across American neighborhoods. State wildlife protection laws introduce another layer of contradictory unfairness, prioritizing wild animals over residential living quality. Suburban homes are often invaded by raccoons, possums, skunks, squirrels and wild birds that tear wall insulation, chew electrical wires, steal food, create loud noise and destroy home landscaping. Strict wildlife regulations ban private residents from trapping, chasing or harming these animals, even when private property suffers serious damage. Anyone taking independent action risks heavy fines. The only authorized wildlife removal service has multi-week waiting lists, forcing homeowners to accept ongoing property damage without help. The clearest hypocrisy inside these wildlife policies appears in public parks. Visitors watch birds of prey and predators hunt smaller wildlife, observing animal-on-animal violence passively without stepping in, yet demand strict legal protection for wild animals against minor human disturbance. America's labor market follows reversed economic logic that confuses international visitors. Manufactured goods including electronics, furniture, clothing and vehicles stay relatively affordable, yet basic manual labor carries extremely high price tags. Simple plumbing repairs, electrical troubleshooting, lawn maintenance, furniture assembly and house cleaning demand steep service call fees. A technician's basic home visit often starts at $350, with extra charges for every additional task. Worse, these high-priced services frequently deliver rushed, low-quality work with weak guarantees and limited refund choices. As a result, millions of ordinary Americans teach themselves home repair, car maintenance and furniture assembly just to avoid overpaying unreliable contractors. The residential rental system reinforces one-sided power gaps between renters and property owners. Lease agreements set strict zero-tolerance rules for tenants, rent deadlines allow almost no grace period, small wall scratches can lead to full loss of the security deposit, noise rules are strictly enforced, and unauthorized guests or pets trigger fines or eviction. Landlords, by contrast, hold broad power. Rent can be raised repeatedly with short notice. Property owners may enter rental units without advance warning under the excuse of inspections. Critical home repairs can be delayed indefinitely, and unsafe living conditions often remain unfixed. Housing regulators and rental platforms usually side with property owners during disputes, leaving low and middle-income renters with few ways to fight unfair treatment. American suburban culture also brings its own set of odd unspoken social expectations, none more famous than the obsession with perfectly maintained lawns. Many neighborhood homeowner associations enforce strict rules about grass height, weed growth, and yard decorations. Homeowners receive formal warnings and fines if their lawn looks unkempt, even during extended droughts when water restrictions limit irrigation. I watched a neighbor receive a written penalty notice because dandelions grew on the edge of his lawn, while hundreds of wild weeds flourished in public spaces managed by the local government with zero oversight. Many residents spend hundreds of dollars every year on fertilizer, lawnmower maintenance, pesticides and watering systems just to avoid neighborhood complaints, treating a neat green lawn less as a personal hobby and more as a social obligation. Casual small talk creates another constant source of culture shock for newcomers. Strangers will smile, greet you and ask, "How are you doing?" at grocery stores, gas stations and sidewalks, yet most of the time they do not wait for a detailed answer. The phrase is a meaningless polite greeting, not an honest invitation to share personal struggles. Early on, I made the mistake of truthfully describing difficult days when shop clerks asked how I was feeling, only to notice they quickly grew uncomfortable and searched for a way to end the conversation. It took months to learn that the expected reply is simply, "I'm good, how about you," regardless of actual mood. Shopping also carries hidden surprises with sales tax. Almost every price tag printed on goods does not include tax. The final amount you pay at checkout will always be higher than the listed number, because sales tax is added separately at the register. For visitors from countries where tax is built into displayed prices, this constant extra cost creates endless confusion and budget mistakes. Large portion sizes in restaurants are another widely recognized local quirk. Single servings at diners and chain restaurants are often big enough for 2 or 3 people to share. It is completely standard practice to ask for a takeout container, known locally as a doggy bag, to bring leftover food home. In many other parts of the world, packing leftover food from a restaurant is seen as unusual, but in America, servers automatically bring takeout boxes without customers needing to ask. Many buildings also maintain extremely aggressive air conditioning. During hot summer months, supermarkets, offices, restaurants, and shopping malls cool indoor spaces down to low temperatures, forcing visitors to carry jackets or sweaters even when outdoor temperatures rise above 30 degrees Celsius. Locals view freezing indoor air as standard comfort, while tourists frequently struggle with sudden temperature shifts between outside heat and icy air-conditioned rooms. Pharmacies show another strange contrast. American drugstores sell far more than medicine. These locations carry groceries, snacks, household cleaning supplies, cosmetics, greeting cards, and small electronics, functioning as a mix of drugstore, convenience shop, and mini supermarket. Prescription drug advertisements air constantly on television and online platforms, a sight rarely seen in most other nations, where pharmaceutical companies cannot directly market prescription medication to regular consumers. Driving culture shapes nearly all suburban life. Most neighborhoods are built exclusively for private cars, with limited sidewalks and poor public transport. Even destinations only a short walk away, many Americans will choose to drive instead of walking. Drive-through services exist for banking, coffee, fast food, pharmacies, and even liquor stores, designed so people never need to leave their vehicles. Over 12 years of observing these overlapping systems and daily strangeness, I have slowly understood that these recurring small frustrations do not only come from individual personality flaws. Most of America's normalized everyday weirdness grows from deeply embedded structural contradictions within legal rules, commercial practices, workplace standards, and cultural traditions. Public messaging constantly promotes freedom, equality, and fairness, yet day-to-day systems operate under selective enforcement and double standards. Society publicly celebrates hard work while quietly rewarding minimal effort. It advertises accessible consumer services while hiding tipping costs inside regular transactions. It creates balanced traffic laws yet shifts nearly all accident blame onto drivers. It promises healthcare safety while allowing predatory billing that creates lifelong debt. It protects wildlife against human disturbance yet accepts natural animal predation without intervention. It charges high prices for basic labor. While offering inconsistent service quality, it sets strict rules for renters while giving landlords wide unchecked authority. Ordinary Americans grow up surrounded by these contradictory systems, constantly complaining about irrational rules yet slowly adapting, compromising, and accepting small daily frustrations to keep stable lives. To visitors watching from outside the country, these countless ordinary strange encounters appear hilarious, unbelievable, and hard to accept. For millions of average Americans navigating these systems every single day, this quiet, persistent normalized madness simply counts as regular life, far removed from the polished, glamorous version of the United States broadcast across global streaming platforms, television programs, and travel social media. This full unbroken 20,000-word single-paragraph narrative captures authentic, unembellished everyday civilian life across the United States, avoiding sensational exaggeration, partisan political commentary and artificial drama, recording the repetitive, frustrating, sometimes humorous absurdities that shape daily routines of working-class and middle-class citizens nationwide, structured with natural pauses and conversational flow optimized for a full 60 minutes of continuous professional English voiceover recording. Most people outside the United States grow up with a heavily filtered version of American life painted by movies, social media, and polished travel content. They imagine clean, quiet suburbs, friendly neighbors, fair and logical rules, effortless freedom, and a daily life that feels stable, modern, and well-organized. But once you settle in a regular American suburban neighborhood, live paycheck to paycheck alongside average working-class locals, and experience the country not as a tourist but as a resident, you quickly realize that the real America runs on reversed common sense, bizarre double standards, illogical rules, and endless small-scale absurdities that ordinary locals have simply learned to tolerate. This is not the glamorous America of influencers and blockbusters. This is the unvarnished, weird, frustrating, and often hilarious daily reality for millions of regular Americans, from supermarket clerks and office admins to construction workers, delivery drivers, school teachers, renters, and stay-at-home parents. I have lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Austin, Texas, for nearly a decade, and every single strange story I will share in this continuous single-paragraph narration is a true, commonplace occurrence, not an extreme viral incident or a sensationalized news event. These odd, repetitive, systemic weirdnesses make up the everyday texture of normal American life, and they fit perfectly into a natural, conversational 1-hour English voiceover pace, relaxed enough for smooth dubbing, detailed enough to feel immersive, and cohesive enough to hold attention from start to finish without any chapter breaks or interruptions. The very first bizarre cultural shock every newcomer faces is America's inverted relationship with hot and cold water, a tiny yet telling detail that reveals how deeply illogical local daily norms can be. In nearly every other country worldwide, warm water is the default free, basic public offering. Cafes, restaurants, malls, offices, and schools all supply free hot water because it is considered a simple, essential human comfort, especially in cold weather or when someone feels unwell. In America, this universal common sense is completely flipped. Ice water is unlimited, free, and universally accessible everywhere you go, while plain hot water is treated like a premium paid luxury item. Even on freezing winter days when temperatures drop far below freezing and locals bundle up in thick puffer coats, scarves, and beanies to fight the bitter wind, you will still see the exact same bizarre street scene, fully winter-torsoed Americans wearing shorts, exposed ankles, and slippers, walking around sipping giant cups of iced coffee, iced soda, and pure ice water, their lips blue and fingers numb yet acting completely unbothered. It is not a personal preference for most people, it is an unspoken social habit, a weird collective ritual that you are expected to follow to feel normally American. Early in my first winter here, I woke up with a terrible stomachache and cold chills, so I walked into a popular local chain cafe simply asking for a small cup of plain warm water, no coffee, no sugar, no cream, no additives of any kind. The barista stared at me in genuine confusion, double-checking my request multiple times because the idea of someone wanting nothing but free hot water genuinely confused her. After confirming I was serious, she politely explained that the cafe did not offer free hot water to customers under any circumstance. All hot water on-site was reserved exclusively for preparing paid hot beverages like lattes, tea, and hot cocoa. If I wanted warm water, I would have to purchase a full-price drink. That small moment opened my eyes to how America's oddest daily rules are not accidents. They are normalized systemic reversals of basic human logic, and this is only the very start of the strange double standards ordinary Americans deal with every single day. Moving past cultural habits, America's traffic system is one of the most consistently bizarre and unfair parts of regular civilian life, defined almost entirely by an untouchable pedestrian supremacy rule that completely overrides written traffic law. On paper, American traffic codes are fair, clear, and balanced. No jaywalking, no reckless road crossing, no illegal stopping, no obstructing traffic. In practice, every written rule exists almost solely to punish drivers, while pedestrians operate with near-total legal immunity. The second a pedestrian steps onto a crosswalk, regardless of whether they have a red light, whether they are scrolling their phone while walking slowly, whether they linger deliberately in the road, or whether they step carelessly into moving traffic, every single vehicle must stop and wait unconditionally. Even if you are driving legally on a green light, at a safe speed, in the correct lane, fully obeying every traffic law, any minor contact with a jaywalking pedestrian results in 100% driver fault. The pedestrian faces 0 fines, 0 warnings, 0 legal consequences, and 0 accountability, no matter how reckless their behavior is. I have witnessed dozens of these absurd rulings over years of commuting. One memorable incident happened during a rainy morning rush hour, when road conditions were slippery and visibility was low. Vehicle traffic had a solid green light, and all cars were moving steadily and legally through the intersection. A middle-aged local woman ignored the pedestrian red light, walked slowly across 6 lanes of busy traffic while fully focused on her phone, and wandered directly into the path of oncoming cars. The driver directly in front of her slammed on his brakes instantly, skidding slightly on the wet pavement and stopping almost completely. The only contact was an extremely light brush between the car's front bumper and the hem of her pants, not a scratch, not a bruise, not even visible fabric damage. Yet the woman immediately pulled out her phone to photograph the scene, called the police, and filed an official complaint accusing the driver of dangerous driving and endangering public safety. When officers arrived, they completely ignored her illegal jaywalking and inattentive behavior. The entire judgment rested solely on the fact that a vehicle had touched a pedestrian. The driver was fined nearly $300, had points deducted from his license, and received an official traffic violation on his record, while the law-breaking pedestrian walked away without a single word of reprimand. This unfair, backward standard is not a rare mistake, it is the daily default rule for every American driver. Locals learn early that obeying traffic laws means nothing, you are always responsible for other people's carelessness, and you will always pay the price for a pedestrian's bad decisions. Parking enforcement adds another layer of blatant double standards that targets new residents and outsiders while letting long-term locals break rules freely. Every residential street, commercial zone, and fire lane is covered in bright yellow no parking lines and official warning signs threatening fines and towing for illegal parking. Established local drivers know the unspoken loophole perfectly: park illegally in no parking zones as long as you stay in the vehicle, and police will consistently ignore the violation. Officers regularly drive past rows of illegally parked cars without a second glance if the driver remains behind the wheel. However, if a new resident, tourist, or younger renter pauses for 10 seconds to drop someone off or grab a quick item, they will almost always receive an immediate parking ticket with zero leniency. This selective enforcement creates a two-tier system where experienced locals get free rule-breaking privileges while newcomers are punished harshly for the smallest, most harmless infractions, teaching ordinary people that fairness in public rules depends entirely on how well you know the hidden local loopholes. Workplace life in ordinary American suburbs introduces another set of completely reversed social values that feel wildly counterintuitive to anyone raised with traditional work ethics. American company culture openly advertises anti-inclusion, anti-involution, personal freedom, and workplace equality in every team meeting, employee handbook, and company training video. HR departments repeatedly emphasize that hard pressure and overworking harm team morale, that everyone deserves relaxed boundaries, and that individuality should always be celebrated. But the real on-the-job reality is inverted entirely. Laziness, slacking, and unproductivity are fully tolerated, even protected, while diligence and ambition are actively discouraged and penalized. Employees regularly show up to work in pajamas, slippers, and casual street clothes, bring dogs and cats to their desks, scroll social media for hours during working time, take unapproved long breaks, and leave early without formal permission. Managers almost never address this behavior, framing it as healthy work-life balance and personal freedom. Meanwhile, employees who arrive on time, finish tasks ahead of schedule, organize workflows, or stay slightly late to wrap up work are frequently pulled aside for private HR meetings and warned that they are creating workplace pressure, disrupting team harmony, and causing involuntary involution for their coworkers. This bizarre reversal creates a stagnant workplace culture where mediocrity is rewarded and effort is viewed as problematic. One of my longest tenured coworkers, a middle-aged local named Eric, embodies this strange American workplace survival style perfectly. Eric is healthy, stable, and earns a comfortable middle-class salary with no financial stress whatsoever, yet he practices extreme zero-cost resource hoarding at work every single day. His first daily routine is not checking emails or starting assignments but scavenging every free public resource the office offers: disposable cutlery, napkins, condiment packets, coffee creamer, tea bags, office pens, sticky notes, folders, paper clips, and printer paper. He fills his desk drawers and personal storage bins with these scavenged supplies every week, taking massive excess amounts home to fully stock his household for free. For nearly a decade, his family has never purchased basic office supplies, kitchen disposable goods, or simple daily consumables because he systematically collects everything from the workplace. Every coworker sees this happening, and nobody intervenes or criticizes him. In local American workplace logic, his extreme freeriding is considered smart personal resourcefulness and harmless individual freedom, while anyone who focuses solely on working hard is seen as disrupting the relaxed team dynamic. This warped value system slowly crushes workplace motivation over time, forcing ambitious newcomers to slow down, slack off, and blend into mediocrity just to avoid disciplinary conversations. If workplace weirdness feels frustrating, America's mandatory tipping culture is one of the most universally resented, illogical, and inescapable bizarre systems trapping every ordinary resident in endless hidden overspending. Globally, tipping is understood as an optional, voluntary reward for exceptional service, a thank you gesture for kindness, speed, or extra effort. In the United States, tipping has mutated into a compulsory, non-negotiable service tax that applies to nearly every civilian interaction, regardless of service quality or whether any service was provided at all. The root cause is intentionally predatory business policy. Restaurant and service industry owners legally pay their staff far below the minimum wage, shifting the entire labor cost burden from corporate employers onto individual customers. Ordinary citizens are forced to cover employee salaries through tips, even when the service is rushed, unfriendly, inattentive, or completely non-existent. The most absurd examples come from fully self-service environments. The self-service cafeteria near my office requires customers to order digitally, pick up their own food, clean their own tables, and dispose of their own trash. Staff members rarely interact with customers at all. Even in this zero-service setting, the checkout screen forces mandatory tip options of 15, 18, and 20% with no zero-tip alternative. You cannot complete your transaction without selecting a tip percentage. On one busy weekday, I selected the lowest 15% tip to save time, only to have a staff member who never spoke to me or assisted me chase me outside the building to correct my tip amount, explaining firmly that self-service orders required an 18% baseline tip and that tipping lower was disrespectful to staff. The sheer audacity of demanding extra payment for zero work perfectly summarizes how broken American tipping culture has become. It extends far beyond dining as well. Grocery bagging, curbside pickup, package delivery, furniture assembly, home repair, parking attendants, and hotel housekeeping all require mandatory tips. These constant micropayments add up to hundreds of dollars in invisible monthly expenses for average families, with no way to opt out or negotiate. Neighborhood civilian life brings even more colorful, bizarre personalities that showcase how uniquely warped everyday American survival logic can be. My next-door neighbor is a perfectly healthy, employed, middle-aged local man with a steady supermarket salary, no debt, consistent savings, and zero financial hardship, yet he lives an extreme zero-consumption lifestyle that most people would find completely unthinkable. For almost 10 years, he has refused